Hi, my name is Michelle Nelson, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Advertising at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. My research looks at persuasion and recently how we can use tools of persuasion to affect social change. So a lot of the advertising we see, and what we'll talk about today, is for less healthy foods. I'm wondering, can we use those same creative, funny techniques to help sell healthier foods? A second area of research looks at advertising literacy. So how can we teach children and adults more about advertising, how it works, so they can be critical consumers? Today we're going to talk a little bit about food advertising. First, I'll discuss some theories for how advertising works. And then we're going to look at different kinds of advertising and look at their effects. And finally, we're going to see if and how advertising could be used to sell healthier foods. Have you watched the Super Bowl? Do you remember any ads? Well, which ones? The Super Bowl is really important for football, but it's also really important for advertising. Last year, 110 million people watched the Super Bowl. Advertisers want many people to watch their ads, so much so that it cost on average $4 million for each company to place a 15-second ad. That's a lot of money. Now, why do you think they do that? Well, they assume that if you see the ads, you'll remember it, you'll talk about it, and the next time you're in the grocery store, you may buy that ad. So what is advertising? Advertising is a paid message that can tell you something you need to know, or which persuades you to buy a product, or which puts forth a point of view. The important points are it's paid for by an advertiser, it should have an identifiable sponsor, it tries to reach a specific audience of potential customers, and it seeks to inform but also persuade you to buy that product. Today, the message is conveyed through many different kinds of media. Advertising's purpose is to give us information. It tries to persuade us to do something or to have a particular point of view. From an economic standpoint, advertising also supports the media content that you see. So it provides the newspaper coverage or the TV coverage. But how does advertising work? Well, we don't really know for sure. There are many theories, most of them based on psychology. The earliest idea, classified as a hierarchy of effects model, is the AIDA. This theory was actually coined in the late 1800s by a salesperson by the name of St. Elmo Lewis. He said there are a series of steps that prospective customers must pass through before you can sell them something. Now, this is a day of door-to-door salesperson, right? And so he assumed first I have to make people aware or have attention toward my product. Then I have to get them kind of interested. Then they have to desire it. And finally, they'll move into action. Well, in the 1900s, academics sort of took those theories from sales and moved them into persuasion and advertising. So for more than 100 years, this is a theory people learn in advertising classes and advertising textbooks. Advertising agencies don't say, oh, I'm going to use AIDA, but they assume that to persuade someone first, you have to be aware of the product, you have to know a little bit about it, you have to want it, and then you buy it. So if this theory was formed in the 1800s, before TV, before radio, before the internet or mobile phones, to what extent do you think it still works today? Can you think of a situation where you knew very little about the product, but you bought it? Those impulse buys, when we act before we think, are quite common. Point of purchase displays in stores operate on that principle. So although this hierarchy of effects theory can work in some situations, perhaps high involvement products like automobiles, the theory doesn't hold up across all media today. Another theoretical framework says that if you like the ad, you think it's funny, you like the music, you're singing along, you like the celebrity, that then you'll have positive affect toward the ad and you'll like the brand. This is a popular attitude toward the ad, attitude toward the brand model. Social learning theory suggests that we learn from others, even those in media. So maybe you admire that person in the ad, that celebrity, that sports hero, you think they look cool, and you will also like the certain product because you think it's cool. So we learn to mimic or imitate others. Some of those others are the people we see in ads. Some of you may be thinking, but I'm not affected by advertising. That's a common perception. It's called the third-person perception of media effects. The theory says that we think we're smarter and we're able to deflect advertising, but we do believe that other people are affected by it. Well, certainly advertising does work on some level with some people. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and people are buying brands that they see advertising. Coca-Cola spent $3 billion on advertising in 2012 alone. They typically spend 7% of sales on advertising. So for every dollar you spend on Coca-Cola, 7 cents goes toward advertising. As a result, Coca-Cola is the #1 brand in the world. Advertising can persuade us without us noticing. This is not subliminal, mind you. It's just that we're not aware of the effects. In psychology, there's a theory called mere exposure theory. Basically, it means familiarity breeds liking. The more you're exposed to an object, such as a brand, the more you like it. Maybe that's why you see so many ads repeated today. Even though you might find them annoying, you might find yourself singing the jingle, or when you're looking at the grocery store saying, oh, that brand looks familiar, and then you buy it. These are just a few of the predominant theories for how advertising works. As I mentioned earlier, there's no one grand theory for how it works. Overall, though, insights from psychology suggest that advertising, when they can create positive affect, will transfer to the brand